Hello, good afternoon, everyone. This is Rahul Bagadia from P Manifold team. I welcome you to our India Charging Ahead webinar series, which we are running now in second year. And today's topic we are focusing on policy inclusion for battery swapping in India. I am glad to have this series jointly done with SMITO, this particular webinar topic today and Dr. Prabjot Kaur from SMITO will be my co-moderator in discussion today. Uh, Most of you, I am assuming, given the background in EVs, and since last 4+ years now, battery swapping has been worked out in India with multiple pilots happening. But the key message that I want to give is like EV battery swapping has really emerged as a strong candidate. Lot of testing, vetting, all those things are in place, and the ecosystem is very fast growing today as we are speaking. This is not an exhaustive list. There are more than 50 players in all different capacities who have tested and put to commercial use battery swapping different components in India. We have just attempted to bring some of the players here. So we have many players who have developed the technology now. Sun Mobility, Esmito are the key leading players in that space. In battery swap, battery OEM systems, again, we have multiple players who have developed the batteries, have got the type approved, and their batteries are running into the systems today. Across the OEMs now, I think two-wheelers, three-wheelers are really leading in adopting battery OEMs and doing all different testing and full commercial pilots across the country. In buses, we have Ashok Leyland, who have put to test with Sun Mobility System in Ahmedabad. Infra providers, I think this is a race which is now growing quite big. Fairly big players, PSU especially, including the petroleum players, Indian Oil, BPCL, including generation and grid transmission power, PGCIL and NTPC. So there is a big players who are really kind of looking into seriously getting onto the ground, and enough vetting again on the technology and economics of battery swapping is existing. And a very good application of battery swapping has happened in the commercial fleet segment, both in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and buses systems I talked about. And most of the biggies in the country, including Ola, Bounce in two-wheelers, they are actually deploying the system. And there are startups like Smarty and others who are actually starting from full electric options. And the space is only growing hot with lot of acquisitions and investments. The charger OEMs, the swap charger OEMs, this space also has quite complementing, and the entire battery chargers and OEM systems is really coming together. So I think like this is a good ground and growing ground. I just want to quickly set up the top proposition that is coming from battery swapping, and what are some of the questions that are still remaining that we all need to find answer. And I request my expert panelists today to dive deeper into some of these questions highlighted. So let's start from the end user perspective. This end user can be an individual end user, a rider of two-wheeler, or it could be a very well a fleet operator running two-wheeler, three-wheeler fleet. And see the best proposition of battery swapping is reduced cost, because now you get the EV without battery and everything gets converted into an OPEX cost. The recharge and swap time is quick. You are free from battery ownership and maintenance as the end user, and all responsibility is owned by the energy operator. What are some of the questions here? Like, I think the first we are talking of the economics, like at what per unit the swap is coming to the end user, and is it really remain economic? Second, I think it's kind of a demand and supply catch, which we keep hearing from multiple players. Like a fleet user is requesting a infra provider of swap that, hey, provide me the swapping across the city, right? At least across one full city, so that when I choose this option, I don't have to look for other options as well. Give me a full city coverage. But then the swap infra provider have this problem that, do you have enough volume for me to set up a system for you across the city? So the swap services coverage within the city, and then we get more ambitious across the cities. I think this is a big question which is coming more from the operations and the viability thing that is existing, which is also kind of being looked upon critically. Safety, yes, because now the battery is moving in and out. There are questions around the safety of it, but there are enough tests. Anand can also talk about it from ARAI, his experience around it. Now, the second part is the OEMs. These are the electric vehicle OEMs or the battery and charger OEMs. And their concern, I think the first bigger most concern is like, is there enough demand? While players have started, startups have kind of started to lead this space in terms of exploring and showing the market. But the bigger players are still kind of seeing like, is there a demand for them to really go for a, very new custom swap battery system EV model? Second is government subsidy. We will talk a little more by our panelists who will address this point. Uh, is there clarity on government subsidy? So currently that is not the case. Battery swap systems are not approved under FAME 2 subsidy. So that is acting as one of the barrier. Type approval, I think this was a question a few years back. Thanks to ARAI and all other testing companies who have now really developed good ecosystem. And then the fourth question is like standardization. What standardization we are looking at? So we will again dive deeper into this aspect. So these are some of the questions coming from the EV and battery OEMs. And we have Ritesh from Kinetic, who will share his perspective from the industry as an OEM player. Then the third very important player is the swapping infra provider, who is actually investing into those swap battery and the entire ecosystem. And the advantage that he get is like over a fixed battery system is a longer battery life. He is able to recycle the battery faster with higher utilization, and he gets actually a much deeper involvement into the value chain, which is high cost of the battery. And his challenges remains very similar to the OEM challenges. Like, is there enough demand and people coming with swap to ensure his utilization is good? Is he able to attract government subsidy on swap batteries, on swap charging stations? So again, the answer is no at the moment. What kind of standardization he needs to do so that any player from any kind of make of two-wheelers or three-wheelers is coming to his swap station, and he can have the same battery fitted without worrying about the OEM and make. And last, the performance, the reliability of this entire swap battery system and return on investment. So these are the questions. There are data points now which is validating some of these questions, especially from the economics and reliability point of view. And hence, in this discussion today, we will focus around policy. Like, what is the policy current landscape that is existing? We all know that FAME 2 is really a booster to EVs in India, but still we are less than 1% of FAME 2 in terms of vehicle sanctioned and money spent. So we really need to kind of ensure that the provision made is rightly put to utilize, and it really helps the market. What are some of the areas? Again, our expert panelists will dive detail into each of these topics. I am only kind of just briefly listing which needs to be looked into. One, subsidy mechanism. I already talked about, like, how do we ensure that battery system get battery swap system gets the subsidy. Then extension of EV electricity tariff to the swap battery charging stations. So there are some indirect understanding of it, but I think if it can come very explicitly in the tariff order notes across states, then the players would do not have to struggle or delay operations with related to this point. And from the Ministry of Finance, I think this is a kind of common across. I would not say this is only for battery swapping, but also for fixed batteries, GST reduction for both batteries and the services at the charging station. So these are some of the very fiscal tied incentives that the players I showed in the first list would really want to avail so that they can take their entrepreneurship to a next level. And yes, because we are talking of this is asked from the government point of view is to ensure that subsidy is not misused and it goes to the end user. So I think it's very important for the industry to come up with very clear ask and share to government a very clear mechanism and suggestion for it. Not to confuse, but what we are asked from the government on the fiscal side is one, but I think the industry also needs to agree upon some of the technological issues around interoperability and standardization. And though there have been long discussions, but I think we need to really take a simpler view, agree to it, move forward, give it at least a 2 year, and if there are changes required, then look into it again. But I think sitting on it and not deciding, I think we are really hampering the opportunity that this swap system batteries really offer. What to standardize and to regulate and what not to. I've just tried to put down some very top level points, and again, our panelists will go into the detailed discussion, and we can revisit this slide when this discussion comes up. And as I said, like while the standardization process is happening, we should not delay the fiscal incentives that can be extended to swap battery systems. With that, want to introduce the line of great experts who have really spent toiled on ground, and I would say battery swapping system is successful because of their efforts. First, we have Nitish coming from Ola Electric Mobility, and he has a vast experience, including on the policy side and business planning side, and he will share his perspective. Then we have Ritesh Mantri, co-founder and executive director, Kinetic Green Energy and Power Solutions. Again, Ritesh is a quite bit sports fan, I would say, and very long years of experience across different enterprises in renewables, and now leading business development and partnerships at Kinetic Green. Then we have Ajay. He is MD Sun Groups. He is CEO and director at Sun Mobility. And Sun Mobility has really played a very strong, very powerful role in overall EV evolution and battery swapping. Then we have Anand. Most of us knows Anand, Mr. Anand Deshpande, Senior Deputy Director, ARAI. Very humble and very connected, and really driving and making all things happen. So that is ARAI's team and their commitment to the entire EV industry. As I said, like I am my co-moderator and good friend, Prabjot Kaur. She is CEO Esmito, and again one of the very earlier, I would say, expert who has been working across different spaces, Esmito, then also in motor design and battery design and multiple things. So I'm really glad, and I welcome you all. And with this, I request Prabjot to first share her thoughts, and then we will start with our other panels. Prabjot.
Sure, Rahul. Many thanks, and pleasure in co-organizing and co-hosting this webinar. Welcome to all panelists and all the attendees also. So just to set up the context, and Rahul has already briefed on the battery swapping, I thought that for the benefit of the audience that is connected to us today, I'll take you through what do we have in the country as far as EVs are concerned. So what is the current status that we have? So if we look at quickly on the numbers of the EVs sold in 2019 and 2020, we see the major chunk of electric vehicles that were sold in the country were two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And as far as the category of EVs is gone, EVs is concerned, it is about 97 to 96, 98% of the two-wheelers and three-wheelers that form a good proportion of the EVs that are sold in the country. Now, interestingly, we also see that if we compare 2019 and 20, it is the two-wheelers which have taken over the majority chunk in 2020, in contrast to what we had in the 2019, where the majority chunk was for the three-wheelers. And very interesting fact is also that out of these all vehicles sold, majority of the vehicles, that is, let's say about 85% of the vehicles out of this whole mix were low-speed vehicles, and only 16% of the two-wheelers were high-speed vehicles. Now, this data, 16% is based upon the FAME subsidies that have been applied for out of the sales. Now, this is on the two-wheeler side of it as far as the EVs are concerned. But if we talk about the entire thing on the, sorry, on the domestic side of it, we see that the entire out of the entire EVs that was sold, it's about 80% of the two-wheelers that are sold out of the whole EV market, not EV but overall automobile market. So if we see for the mature vehicles as well, so considering India would be matured on the EV side also, we see that it is still going to be a good mix on the two-wheelers and three-wheeler side. And it is the affordability that drives the vehicles, because if you and I are able to spend about a lakh of money on a two-wheeler, I would maybe would prefer to buy a high-speed vehicle rather than a low-speed vehicle. So it is majorly driven through the affordability. And in India, we see that the majority of our trips are actually shorter trips. And to that matter, if we talk about these shorter trips are not only for the regular commute that we have, but also we have considered for the entire vehicle segment. I mean, when we talk about the fleet, commercial segment, so this is a total scenario that we have considered. And what we also found out in one of our studies that we did with WRI, I'm sorry, I lost my screen. I don't know where to get it back.
Prabjot,
Ayushi, can you help me find out?
just do your alt tab, Prabjot. Maybe we can see your screen.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, got it. Yeah, so we had a study with WRI done a couple of years back, where we found that the trip length on an average is about 5 to 7 kilometers and not long. But whenever we talk about vehicles, what comes to us first in our mind is, I mean, every one of us listening EVs would talk about Teslas at the first thing, and then maybe BMW and other stuff where we talk about mileages. But if we talk about Indian scenarios, the scenario is very, very different. So if we are to talk about our country, we need to talk about what are our needs and our expectations out of our automobile sector, and then talk accordingly. So if we see for this concern, one, on the vehicle mix that we are going to have now and in future, affordability and the trip length, then it is a battery swapping that becomes very apt to suit to the whole ecosystem. Now, when we talk about battery swapping, simply it is that we are talking about smaller size, because we cannot afford larger batteries to be swapped, picked up, carried down, and then swap them as and when required. So a discharged battery to be swapped with a charged battery. The very important fact why do we want to go for swapping is actually the cost. So batteries are about half the cost of a smaller EV when we talk about a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler. So as soon as we take out the vehicle, take out the battery out of the vehicle, our cost is almost 50% of the total cost. Added to that is the battery life. So most of us, when we buy the electric vehicles, the very first thing that we see is that how long is our battery going to last, or to that matter, how long our vehicle is going to last. And we talk about warranties. That FAME also right now recommends or mandates for subsidy to be like 3 years, right? But when we talk about these warranties, these warranties are provided at a specific temperature. So these are provided at 25 degrees centigrade. But when we talk about the India and the real drive conditions, we are driving at 35 degrees, we are driving at 40 degrees, we are also driving at 50 degrees in the country. So if we talk about that versus if we can have it in the controlled environment, we and ourselves have seen that it is about 40% of the life that we can gain if we try to charge them at 25 degrees centigrade. And that is possible only when the battery is taken out of the vehicle, because inside the vehicle you can't park it in a air conditioned environment or in a situation where it's always going to be 25 degrees centigrade. So this is the impact only on the charging if we do it in a controlled environment. So if we talk about battery swapping, the concept is when we apply it on a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, we need to have people who kind of set up their units to supply these batteries. And this could be there at every hook and corner of the city and everywhere. And that is something that was envisaged by Niti Aayog as well. So this was one of the campaigns that, or a poster that we designed during the Prime Minister's visit here to showcase the Niti Aayog's idea onto him to say that hey, it can be actually everywhere and it can bring lots of jobs, etc. also. And if we talk about this kind of a system where swapping is happening, this is much like a simple LPG cylinder system that we usually see. We swap the systems, we swap the cylinders whenever it is required. And the only difference being that we do it only with one cylinder, but it is now possible with 2 or 3 batteries that you want for a range or in a system, how much are needed. And accordingly, if we talk about that, what are the total gains that we are getting out of it? The very first thing is that reduction in the upfront cost. And remember that we talked about that our market is primarily driven by the cost, and therefore affordability is a very, very big concern. And as soon as we're taking out the battery out of it, this is what it makes the system within reach of the common man. Second thing is that if we have the vehicles and if we are talking about fleet operations or delivery applications, etc., we cannot wait for very, very long to get the vehicle charged. And hence, this battery swapping comes as a very good system wherein just go there, swap the system, and come back. So it takes lesser than the time it takes for filling up a petrol or diesel tank. The third thing is that eliminates elaborate need for setting up the public infrastructure, where you would require good amount of real estate to be in place. Where even if that is there, then the whole lot of parking space along with that would be needed. A very important part that we just discussed was enhanced battery life, which is actually giving you better ROIs against your assets. Very critical element that people are talking about, especially as far as discoms are concerned, other people are concerned, is about the load management. So if these are electric vehicles and going to be charged all at night, and night the domestic load is anyways increasing, what can we think about parity? We can do that if we talk about the swapping systems, because there in bulk we can schedule when do we charge the battery, when do we discharge the battery, and hence bringing a good balance in the load profiling within day or night or whatever profile we want to follow to balance the grid. And another important attribute is improved infrastructure utilization. We can use the same battery for 3 years, for those many number of cycles, or use it within a few months. But what is going to happen is, as we see that there are technological innovations and evolutions in the battery, and every 6 months we see that the battery chemistry or battery performance is increasing, is improving. So the more is the burn rate of the battery, the better is the chance that we would be able to get into this system, the better technology faster. So if we talk about the overall architecture, I thought that since we would be talking about different elements and different concerns with our panelists, then it is good to actually tell the audience what are the key elements that we have in the whole ecosystem. So when we talk about the complete system, a few of the actors that we have in the whole scenario is first as a customer, or all of us are. Then the swapping outlet where we can go and swap the battery. Now, this system is there in place when we also have a charger along with the outlet. But there are cases where there's logistics and the requirement for setting up the bulk charging stations. And that comes when we talk about a second kind of an architecture where we charge the batteries all in a godown kind of a place and distribute those batteries, much like cylinders that we do now. So we distribute these cylinders or the charged batteries to different outlets, not to homes, but different outlets. Now, in the cases where we do not need this distribution, this bulk charging station and the swapping outlet actually would be at one place, and we won't need the logistics leg also. But these are all the actors that are possible here, with obviously an integration of all these things to the cloud, so that all different units, subsystems are connected to the same platform, and at any given time, you know that what is happening in the entire ecosystem, and how much I need to provision where, and what are the utilization mechanisms I need to follow to kind of completely manage the whole system. Now, apart from the players that Rahul has just talked about, on different players like Ola, Gogoro, and there was Better Place that actually started swapping but didn't succeed in that part of the region. We have done some deployments and tested it out with about 14 OEMs, 6 operators, and we are there in 6 states now at very small, minuscule level, but we have started doing that. And we are gradually seeing a lot more traction for that. Now, as far as challenges are concerned, I thought that we should actually split them very logically into technical and business challenges so that we can talk about it accordingly. When we say about technical challenges, the very first challenge that comes is the battery safety, battery handling, because it is going to go through different hands. And do we have the mechanism? Do we understand the batteries well? And are there good precautions, good safety mechanisms put into the battery such that it's always and always free of any mishaps that are going to happen, or we have better alerts that would come to the system. Second is the capacity and range prediction. So as soon as we start, the business start using the battery, the same battery that is giving me 100 kilometers on day one might give me 30 kilometers after maybe 7, 8 months. So can we tell the customer that this is the battery you're going to get, and this is the promise I'm going to make with you, that this will last for this much kilometers. Similarly, it is a battery health and residual life. As an operator or as a user, can I determine that how many cycles are left in the battery? And lastly, the performance of the battery pack. Is it good to be used for another application, or do we actually send it for recycling, or we completely dismantle it and it is of no use? So can analytics help in all that? And that's what we have been trying to figure out. On business side of it, the first challenge is the standardization. Now there would be different views, and I'm sure this is going to be a very, very good discussion around standardization. People talking about it is needed, it is not needed, and if it is needed, what all do we standardize? Then second, on the interoperability part of it, which is kind of related to standardization, that any operator across platforms, across vehicles, across batteries. These are all interoperable, and just like petrol and diesel stations, you do not need to worry about that. I need to go to which operator. Or which kind of a battery is suitable for me, or what kind of a plug I need to have. So everything is standardized and everything is interoperable. The third thing is ownership of the battery. So as we talk about the setting up of this business, who owns this battery? So this means there has to be another business coming up, emerging up out of the swap concept, which means that somebody as an energy operator needs to own these batteries. Like Rahul was talking about, so many petrol companies that are coming up in picture for holding that asset to provide it to the customers. So this ownership becomes important. Aligned to that is the battery inventory. How much do I keep the inventory? Because I keep it large, it is going to be my dead investment from business point of view. If I keep it small, then I need to see, I need to fulfill the demand of the clients and the customers as well. And lastly, the policy support. And I guess we are going to have a good discussion around the policy support, around the FAME subsidy, what all is there, what all is possible, and how part of it also. And with this, these were the broad thoughts that I wanted to touch upon, and didn't want to talk much on the solutions that we have and things that we have done, but set a stage to have a good discussion, and would request all the audience participants as well, whatever questions you have, please keep on writing in our chat window, and we'll try to address it as far as possible. And as is there, we would want to maybe go to our panelists now. So I hand it over to Rahul,
Sure,
and we are going to start with our first. Rahul, to you.
thank you, Prabjot. Very nice presentation and giving the setting the context. With that, I invite Nitish Arora from Ola Electric, to share his experience. Nitish, maybe you want to set a context like whatever things we are saying is battery swapping can bring, the positives of it, and you being one of the biggest user, uh, have you really seen all those technological and operational advantages? Teething issues are gone, and you think the systems is really set to go high? And what further policy support will be required, Nitish? Over to you.
Sure. Uh, at the outset, I would really like to congratulate Rahul and Prabjot ma'am for scheduling this discussion and webinar. I think after the Ministries of Power recognition to swapping in June, the topic has again become hot, and I think now we got those policy amendments even from FAME too. I think Deshpande sir is here. It would be good to hear his viewpoint as well. So to start off with, I just wanted to first give you a quick background as to what Ola Electric has been doing. I think you have already laid down the background on what the value proposition of battery swapping in a cost-sensitive market like India, particularly. And although battery swapping helps you mimic those experience of the existing fuel pumps and how it becomes crucial for accelerating EV adoption. So Ola started with the country's first project in Nagpur way back in May 2017. A year and a half later, we moved to Gurgaon, where we converted 50% of the e-rickshaw fleet to swapping, setting up one of the country's largest swapping stations there, which is, ma'am also pointed out, the think of on the bulk charging stations, how they could also suffice the use case. And now, so both these pilots, we have deployed generation 1, generation 2 technologies, see there how these batteries or user experience, they respond to the user experience in different climatic conditions and so forth. So I think with the acquisition of even Etergo, I think many of you would have heard in the news, Ola Electric also eyes that the two-wheelers and three-wheelers would be the first adopters, both in the personal and the shared mobility segment on battery swapping.
Nitish,
So
are you
to start
sharing?
off with, Rahul, just I think it shows that only could share the screen. I think I don't know why. Could you mm, share
You
the
must have still invite Nitish. You just have to accept and share your main screen.
I have done that. It's Could you see my screen?
No, Nitish.
No, it doesn't allow me. I think either because of the privacy software at my end, or not sure.
Ayushi, can you share my screen? I will then share Nitish presentation.
Okay, sir.
You can continue in the meantime. I will put your screen.
Sure. Sure. Perfect. Perfect. So I think I mainly wanted to discuss both the business side, technical side challenges, and the associated policy unlocks that are required to bring that swapping proposition. So I think first was the recognition of battery swapping itself by the Ministry of Power. Although the charging infrastructure guidelines have changed a couple of times by the ministry, I think June notification made it possible that finally we have a recognition here. The reason it becomes all the more important is on the implementation side. When you go to the discoms for availing EV tariff, what many states, 13 14 states have come out with the EV tariffs. When you start availing EV tariffs for swapping, it does not comes through. They have been arguing that it's not have been notified or ratified by the Ministry of Power guidelines, and you need to then file petitions against in the discoms with the regulatory commission and so on and so forth. Just to give a just a glimpse of what it takes is, for example, even in the case of Delhi, I need to go through this 6-month process. A petition was filed in October, and only in February 19 we received a notification from DRC, the regulatory commission, that EV tariff is another form of battery charging, and hence EV tariff would be valid on swapping. So I think one thing, although the Ministry of Power notification recognizes it, but one simple next step would be if this needs to come into the tariffs order notified by the respective state regulatory commission. For that, a guideline by CRC would be required to ensure that the smooth implementation at the ground level. Moving on to the second one that I wanted to discuss really was the how we can create a level playing field for swapping uh, in under FAME 2. I think so. Everybody of us here agree that vehicle manufacturing is already at a scale, and what you need to subsidize is the battery, and that is why subsidy under FAME 2 it says linked to the battery capacity, which is 10,000 rupees a kilowatt hour. If that be the case, what mechanism that we suggest, keeping in mind the ministry's concern that the subsidy should go to the end user and should not be misused, what we are also suggesting that end buyer could still avail this subsidy whenever he buys a vehicle with a swappable battery packs. A vehicle OEM can come up with a variant with a fixed battery and a swappable battery to ensure that the consumer choice is not hampered. He is given both the options, and vehicle OEM can avail the subsidy from the DHI. So no need of increasing the regulatory work even for DHI. And the economic arrangement, how that subsidy passes or shared between the battery OEM or a BSO and the vehicle OEM, should be left to their mutual cooperation. And the regulator should not control as to how this subsidy should pass on. And the fundamental advantage, I think the DHI has been reiterating that the intent of FAME India scheme is to support more and more number of electric vehicles. So with swapping, vehicles could be do with smaller battery packs, implying that your average subsidy per vehicle reduces, and hence a more number of vehicles could be supported with a given FAME 2 budget. Also, under FAME 2, with the recent tender or a notification with DHI sanctioned 2600 plus charging stations, we also hope that battery swapping is now also considered in the future EOIs, and they should be open to allotting such tender to even the private companies, because what we have seen in those 2600 charging stations, that apparently all have been gone to the government PSUs, and no private party finds place there. So to create a level playing field, I think the government needs to consider that as well. The third one is on the GST. Currently, the issue is that electric vehicles are being taxed at 18%, while the electric vehicles attract a GST 5%, while batteries attract a GST of 18%. Now, what we are saying that batteries and chargers are essentially your automotive components, and hence the GST rates should remain consistent across EVs, both as a whole and its components, and hence a ratification of addressing the invested GST structure, reducing GST on batteries to 5% would help accelerate EV adoption. Now, that a benefit of that would be multifold. Just to, for example, over the lifetime of a vehicle, battery needs to be exchanged. So while considering users' decisions to buy an electric vehicle, they would also consider, look, after a 3-year or 2-year period, I need to change my battery life. Now, if you could reduce the GST from 18 to 5%, it helps reducing those upfront costs and also optimizes TCO. Second, government has been contemplating incentives on mainly on cell manufacturing within India, under the Niti Aayog National Mission on Transforming Mobility and Battery Storage. I think what we have seen in our discussions with the cell manufacturers, that it requires a lot of economies of scale to come in before they commit to such kind of an investment. So an aggregation, so for instance, the government could have a lagged approach here. They could incentivize initial 2 to 3 years battery manufacturing, battery pack manufacturing. For instance, you have in the phase manufacturing program in the FAME that 50% or this many percentage of the value addition needs to happen in the domestic territory. Similarly, you could iterate those for battery pack manufacturing instead of going from cell manufacturing from day one, which is very difficult at this moment in time. And I think once you also reduce the GST, it would also helps in generating those demand. Economies of scale would come in, and you could have those reduced import dependency. And at a time when the region is already facing geopolitical tensions, I think such a move can also go a long way in enhancing the resource security as well. And the third would be, the last point here would be on GST on charging and swapping as a service. So electricity already fetches a lot of taxation, electricity duty, pension trust charge, fixed charges, regulatory surcharge, and so on and so forth. Now, over and above a GST of 18% leads to a relatively high operating cost. So, for example, a user which needs to switch from a diesel, petrol, or a CNG to electric, to make that operating costs even more lucrative, a GST reduction on charging and swapping as a service from 18 to 5 would really help. So I think these are the first three things that I would like to pitch. I would be happy to take more questions afterwards, but going into the most technical challenge that has been, I think, have been seen as the most impediment of not having battery swapping in the regulatory frameworks is of the standardization. We believe that standardization barrier at this point in time is superficial enough. It's a lot of more hype created there. What we are saying, to address the issue of interoperability, vehicle OEM can build only one particular type which could fit in different swapping kits. So in case if the user wants to switch from one service provider to another, he just needs to make a minor changes which would come at a very minimal cost, just like your CNG kits. And to ensure the safety or interoperability concerns, industry can definitely work around a consensus building around voltage and the communication protocol. But we are absolutely deny that standardizing size dimensions of the battery pack would help, because if you do that, you are imposing restrictions on how innovations can take forward this entire EV journey. For example, if you standardize the width of the battery, it imposes the restriction amount what kind of cells could be used, the amount of energy could be extracted out of it. Even at a connector level, there is an ample scope of energy, given that the exposure to dust and high temperatures in the Indian conditions. Moreover, what we have seen with Borat pilots, where we have also worked with multiple connectors, multiple technologies, that on-ground pilots would help the ecosystem decide that which is a good quality. Deciding upfront when the sufficient mass adoption has not happened on the ground might kill the industry. There would not be sufficient amount of incentive to innovate. Also, one size fits all. If you standardize everything, it restricts the customized services for different consumer segments and the use cases. For example, what we see that over time, different vehicles would require different types of batteries. A commercial vehicle would require a battery pack that lasts longer, while, for example, personal case, a woman or an old age person might want a battery pack which is they're fine with the lesser range, but it needs to be much lighter then. So you do not really need to standardize the battery pack in its entirety. And the last thing that on the policy or regulatory front, I would like to say that the first impediment that on the operationalizing front that battery swapping faces comes from the grid infrastructure. Barring Delhi and Mumbai, which has defined LT connections till 200 kilowatt, if I go even installing a single bulk charger, madam also shows how a Kirana store might dispense batteries. Now, for that to happen, what we have seen that on ground, the transmission and distribution network is not that robust enough. And the fixed cost to avail or even deploy a single bulk charger there would be such high that it does not make the entire value proposition not that lucrative enough. So what we want really is that a discoms to provide some sort of support in upgrading the grid infrastructure, because ultimately they are upgrading their asset as well, which they would be using for their future transmission and distribution networks as well. So if that's some sort of, or a mechanism of a viability sort gap funding could be created out of it. Second is that everybody is aware that for user experience to have there, you need a dense and a distributed network of charging and swapping stations, implying that electricity demand across the city would be distributed. So even if I want to power my swapping stations or my EVs through renewable energy, I might not have a 1 megawatt of standby requirement at single location. So if the government and the regulators could consider allowing aggregation of the demand, that would really help. Now that would have a multifaceted advantage on the battery storage or the energy storage side as well. It would provide an enabler for a smart grid. It could help feed the batteries are in a better position, I would say, than vehicle to grid technology. Battery to grid technology is more feasible, what we have seen. So that could be one of the cases. And also is that Ministry of Power recently also extended the waiver of IS interstate transmission charges, transmission losses and surcharges for renewable energy projects coming through competitive bidding processes, and essentially for the discoms, because discoms use those projects to meet their RPO targets. So if you need to incentivize powering of EVs through renewable energy, government should also consider waiving of these charges at least for a 2-year period for captive renewable energy projects. This would also help your renewable energy target of 5 gigawatts, in the sense that when the government is contemplating increased duty of custom duty on solar modules imported from China, if you make the use case of renewable energy even more cheaper, your economies of scale required for manufacturing solar modules within India would come faster. I think so. That is why we also see that renewable energy coupled with EVs, if you could have these measures in place, this could accelerate both EV adoption and our journey on renewable energy as well. So I think these are the broad points. The last one that I would like to make was on the having land at viability rentals on strategic locations. For example, 2 years back, Central Electricity Authority (CEA) in the minutes of the meeting also say that discoms have a lot of land which they have in surplus. If portions of these land are suitable for setting up swapping facilities, and discoms should made available this land for setting up those units. Now, if we could accelerate and this process with the regulatory commission, with the forum of regulators. I think your think on that is the high land rentals made the charging business unviable. Even that goes away. So you could have landed viability rentals at these surplus locations, and which could help accelerate setting up a network of charging stations. So I think these are the few points that I would like to pitch in, but definitely open to discussions from the industry peers and from the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitish. Thank you so much. And some very interesting insights and a mix of the standardization that you are proposing. So this is something, I mean, what to standardize, not to standardize, and we'll get back to it. And I think there are ways where innovation is not killed, even while we say that form factor could be standardized, but then we have to come on to that consensus that how to do that, how part of it is important. And probably we'll delve into a little more onto this discussion of standardization, interoperability, taxation, and interestingly, the point that you have brought up on the land acquisition as well, and not only for actually can be used for swapping, for setting up swapping, but eventually for setting up the charging stations as well. So with that, we would move to Mr. Ritesh Mantri for hearing his understanding on the market from the vehicle OEM's perspective and what has been his experience and some insights onto the concerns, challenges, and some proposals that he can make. Ritesh ji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prabjot. Thank you, Rahul, for arranging, this much needed discussion. In fact, we have been discussing on this topic, since a long time. Very insightful, presentation by Nitish. I mean, he basically touched upon, almost all the points, as a energy operator, be it recognizing battery swapping technology. I mean, the kind of efforts, taken by them. Creating a level playing field, be it GST rationalization or powering the EV infra through renewable energy and all. So I will restrict my discussion strictly from an OEM's lens. So what are our experiences at Kinetic Green, because we have also been part of all the experiments, swapping experiments that has happened in the country since May 2017, where we partnered with Ola for electric three-wheelers, and later on, we we extended that cooperation at Gurugram also. Started with 100 vehicles, pilot of 100 vehicles. So I'll come to all that, but before I start, just our belief system that the Stone Age didn't end, for the lack of stones, and we believe that the oil age will end long before the world will run out of oil. So that's what we believe, at Kinetic Green. I mean, just for the benefit of the attendees, who probably may not know, much about Kinetic Green, it's a dedicated company, vertical of the Kinetic Group. We are in the business since last 60 years. And we have created some wonderful products, even at a time, when the standards were not defined. We started working on electric three-wheelers. So, I mean, all we have to offer today is a range of electric three-wheelers. We already have low-speed electric three-wheelers. We call them e-rickshaw, which is there in front of your screen. We are coming up with a high-speed passenger and loader model also in a couple of months. This is the range of the loaders, cargo vehicles, which is already there in the market, both in L3 and L5 category. Looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, our R&D team was very quick to come up with new products, e-foggers and e-sprayers. The specialty is both the foggers and sprayers, they are water-based. They use water-based technologies. So they are not using the diesel or rock oil, as a medium to spray the disinfectants. We have recently launched Kinetic Green e-speed cycles. We're getting very good traction on that, especially post COVID-19, post this lockdown. There is a surge in demand of electric cycles also. And we started with buggies because when the Kinetic Green was born, at that time there were no regulations for in the CMVR, for electric three-wheelers. So we started our journey with electric buggy. We have, two-seater, four-seater, six-seater, eight-seater, and even 14-seater tourist bus in our fleet. So again, just to come back to very basic question, what are the challenges for EV ownership? Most of us we know, but still, if I have to look at it from a buyer's perspective, what constitutes demand? There are two factors. One is a will to buy, and the other one is means to buy. Once you have will to buy, then and means to buy, then the question is that of the cost, feature, and performance parameters. I believe that EVs, can meet and beat, all the specs, which today the conventional vehicles, they have to offer. Performance also, can be made at par with the ICE vehicles. In fact, much superior experience can be given to the buyer. But the only hindrance is the cost and the subsystems. I will not go to the other parts of the cost, the financing and all that stuff, because, the discussion has to be restricted to the current topic. But yes, cost is one of the factors, which has proved to be a big hindrance because the other two subsystems, battery and charger, they have been, traditionally since last 3-4 years, they are packaged with the vehicle, and that's why the cost of ownership is high. The other point is there is a limited driving range, there is a range anxiety, the charging time, and then the reliable service, for maintenance and repair works. So we felt that, as a OEM, these are the factors which are kind of hindrance for adoption, larger adoption, of electric vehicles. Now, we don't see as a OEM, battery swapping just as a technology. For us, it's a very powerful tool. It's just not one technology. But the moment you decouple the battery from the vehicle, the cost of the vehicle comes down, by almost 50%. So that gives a chance for the people, even at the bottom of the pyramid, to own an electric vehicle. It also, addresses all the issues with regard to range anxiety, charging time, battery life, because now the battery is maintained by the energy operator, who is probably better equipped to handle the batteries. The batteries are charged under a controlled environment, giving the battery better life. So overall, a better experience, for the buyer. We at Kinetic, we have participated, as I told all of you that,
Can you change your screen view? I think we are seeing multiple screens.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Fine.
So so as Kinetic, we have participated in development of this revolutionary, we call it 2-minute battery swapping platform with the technology partners. The benefit, as we explained that, quick swaps makes it easy for the buyer. He has to, it just, he doesn't have to adapt. He just has to adopt. It's the same way today the fueling is done at the station. So he just has to go to the battery retail outlet and he has to swap his batteries. Again, we feel that it is most suitable for electric two-wheelers and electric three-wheelers. We are not very sure that, how this technology would benefit the electric four-wheelers in longer term, but certainly, we see a lot of merit of this technology for electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Again, when we talk about swapping, and battery being a green technology, but we feel that, again, this battery energy operators are probably in a better position to also ensure that the batteries are disposed of, in a proper manner. Though we do not have, the regulations in place yet, not to my knowledge. But a day will come, when we will have mass battery adoption, mass EV adoption, So I think that it only makes sense that instead of leaving it on individual buyer, the energy operators they dispose of the battery in a proper manner. And the last point is, I mean, everything boils down to cost. Our experience shows that the cost of battery swaps is much lower than that of, I mean, per kilometer cost is much lower than that of a petrol or a conventional diesel vehicle. Just to kind of dig deeper into our experience, we have a tie-up with Bharat Petroleum, one of the largest oil companies in India. They have their strength of 15,000 plus outlets, and IIT Chennai is the technology partner in this association. And we also have a long-standing association with Ola. Again, as I told you, that we participated in the Nagpur swap pilot, followed by the a pilot at Gurugram, with 100 vehicles. So I won't go into these details; they have already been explained. Just to if we have to look at the numbers, electric rickshaw with a good lithium-ion battery costs about 180,000. If you remove the battery, the cost of the vehicle becomes 90,000. And if the government gives some kind of a subsidy initially, the vehicle price becomes 60,000 rupees. And if they barter, with the existing vehicle, then it can come down to even 45,000-50,000 rupees. Same applies to e-auto. E-auto costs about 2,90,000 rupees. The battery cost is about 1,40,000 rupees. If we remove the subsidy, then the entire proposition becomes very, very attractive, for the end user. So this is very important, when I say mass adoption, can be achieved very rapidly. Very quickly about, just to demonstrate, pictures, show some pictures about our association with Bharat Petroleum. So very quickly, I mean, with this partnership, we have already deployed about 50 vehicles in Kochi and Lucknow. And now post-COVID, the plans are to launch about 1,000 vehicles in Lucknow and Kochi. And then probably, we will go for a phase 2 and cover 7 more cities. This was our experiment with Ola, as Nitish has already touched upon it. I won't dwell too deep into this. So our learning so far, I mean, this I believe is the most important thing, from the OEM's perspective. Our learning so far are there is immediate acceptance, with the drivers for the swapping as a model for electric three-wheeler. We still are not very sure that how the electric two-wheeler user would adopt to this technology, because I mean, there could be some other propositions, or structures, which could be offered, like battery leasing instead of swapping. But they may want to even own the batteries. But as far as electric three-wheeler drivers are concerned, we have seen a great acceptance, for the technology. The most significant thing is that with swapping, there earnings, they have gone up, as high as 25 to 30%. I mean, again, it depends on the driver. I mean, virtually you can drive the vehicle, almost, 24/7, because it just takes 2 minutes to swap the batteries, and you can just go on, with your business. So there is actually, I mean, theoretically there is no upper cap, but what we have seen is that during the same driving hours, he can definitely, earn a delta of 25-30% more. A few things, which we have observed is that the batteries and the connectors, they need to be robust. We have a peculiar environment. uh, the batteries have to withstand, heat, dust, and the bumpy road conditions. So we have seen, some problems, with the connectors and even with the batteries. So I guess, that needs to be worked upon a little bit. Then again, range per swap, we feel that it has to be decent. It's not that, the vehicle owner is just uh, keep swapping the batteries, all day. So there has to be a decent range provided to him, I mean, at least 55 to 60 kilometers, because there are some dead kilometers also the moment, I mean, he leaves, from his house to his place of work, and again goes back to his place. Uh, Again, I mean, this point is always said, that a dense infrastructure density is a must in that particular geography. This is again a chicken and egg situation. I mean, whether the vehicle population should be there to support the charging infrastructure, or charging infrastructure should be there, to support the vehicle population. But we feel that the time has come for the OEMs and the energy operators to work very closely uh, to make this a success. So they can come together, hatch out a joint marketing strategy, go to market strategy, meet the financiers, and try to scale up, the EV penetration. We feel that, that could be one of the ways. Again, battery integration with vehicle is a cumbersome process, especially when there are multiple energy operators. So, I mean, each one is having, their architecture, the depth of discharge, their connectors, their length, width, height, their connectors, their communication protocols. So, yeah, as Nitish correctly said, that I am all for innovations, but as an OEM, we feel that some bare minimum standardization has to be there, which will
Sure.
not anyway hinder the innovation. So there should be a lot of scope for innovation. I mean, of course, I mean, that's the way forward. That's how the industry is going to grow. But some bare minimum standardization. I mean, as an OEM, we dream to see that, one retail outlet with multiple energy operator stations, at his outlet, and the customer has a choice to choose, from the batteries. If I have to put it in a very crude way, I will say that I want the best of, say, consumer durable batteries, the AA and AAA batteries, which are like kind of standardized, in terms of size, so they can fit in any kind of the AA, AAA batteries in any consumer durable device, and some kind of telephone provider kind of a mechanism, wherein, the leasing and charging, these two charges are different. So one customer, goes to, say, X energy operator station with a Y energy operator battery. So the Y energy operator battery should also be able to get the leasing amount, while the charging amount should go to the X operator. I mean, this is a wish list, but as an OEM, we would want, this kind of a system. So that will definitely, make the life of an OEM very easy. Today, I mean, there are so many permutation combinations, and we have to cater to so many wiring harness designs, and different connectors. Integration process takes long. Nitish's team has worked with our team, for almost 12 months to do the integration, and I mean, to make sure that there is enough juice in the powertrain, and we exploit, I mean, to the last bit. So these are, a few, wish list, as an OEM. Then, there is one more concern that we must address the scenario today. It's very early days. But again, from the OEM's point of view, if I sell a vehicle and for some reason the energy operator, cease to operate, in that scenario, what happens, to the vehicle owner? So that's a big worry. These questions are raised, especially by the lenders, that since the battery is not owned by the driver, how is it that we are going to finance, and what if the energy operator winds up the operation, say 12 months down the line? So that's something, which needs to be addressed. One more thing is uh, the tariff, for swapping. We believe that yes, these are early times. We need to simplify the system. So per swap charge, would make sense to start with, but slowly we need to shift on a charge as you use. The basis should be the energy consumed. The basis should not be number of swaps, because there is always some energy left in the battery, and that will only make the life of the driver easy. So a very quick policy change suggestions. We feel that there has to be an inclusion of electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler, both the category of the vehicles. Of course, electric four-wheeler also, if that is practical, in the FAME 2 demand incentive. Again, any businessman, when they make plans, it is not dependent on subsidy, but it will just act as a catalyst. With swapping itself, the cost of the vehicles becomes half. So as such, that becomes a very compelling and very attractive proposition. But the FAME 2 demand incentive will definitely go a long way, to further generate, that kind of a demand. I don't know what is the hindrance, but to my knowledge, when I read the circular of FAME 2 program, it very clearly says, the annexure B of that circular, that number of batteries such as 1, 2, or 3, and if there are more than one battery, then all the batteries should compulsory be required to run the vehicle. So if this condition is met, I think, whether the batteries are swappable or there is a onboard charging, the subsidy should be given. There has to be stringent criteria and regulation for the energy operators also, to ensure that safety, reliability, and continuity, of the operations, safety, reliability of the batteries. Very quickly, power tariff rationalization for EV and battery charging. The electricity cost, we feel, is still prohibitive in many states, resulting in higher charging cost. As Nitish said, that yes, incentive should be given, for the use of renewable energy for battery charging. Net metering could be one thing, we can make it hassle free. Every state has a different policy that takes longer, to kind of integrate this entire thing. Again, removal of cap, as correctly pointed out by Nitish, removal of cap of this the capacity of 1 megawatt, that will also go a long way. We have been discussing about this one nation, one grid policy, since 1990. I think that, with this, the time has come that we better implement it. We should also have stringent battery disposal norms. Otherwise, all these talks of this technology being green will remain only on paper. So we feel that, there has to be a system, there has to be some laws. One most important thing is battery performance norms. We see that a lot of energy operators, will come in days to come now with this notification and recognition of battery swapping, one of the technologies. We feel that, batteries with 80% or less efficiency should not be used for swapping. It doesn't make sense, for the user if the efficiency is dropped below, that point. Again, there has to be some effort by the government to encourage lending, for EVs with swappable batteries, because then batteries are, again, as explained, all these benefits are there, and the chances of the driver defaulting on EMIs are very less, because now the batteries are maintained by a very professional energy operator. So that peace of mind should be there, but that thought needs to be inculcated right from the top level. And one last suggestion, maybe to Deshpande sir, that this type approval for one model with one energy operator should be valid for all the energy operators. We are, actually tired of getting the vehicles homologated with different battery OEMs, and just the change of battery calls for altogether a new set of homologation. So that's a little we feel that complex, which can be solved very easily. So this is all I have to make. I'll be happy to take questions from the attendees later on. Over to you, Rahul. And
Ritesh, very wonderful point of view. To all the audience and my other colleagues, I think we are running little out of time. Looks like there will be a case that we should stay for a little longer time for looking into all the interesting questions we are getting. So that will be one request. With that, let me request Ajay. Ajay is CEO from Sun Mobility, and we would like to hear his view, his innovations, and then very quickly coming to like what are the key changes in policy that Ajay thinks can really bring battery swapping, level playing with the other technologies. Ajay, over to you. Yes, your screen is seen, Ajay.
Yeah, you can see my screen.
Very much, Ajay. Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. So in the interest of time, I'll go a little bit faster. But as you know, Sun Mobility has been working on battery swapping for now almost 4 years in India. It's founded by Chetan Maini, who was the founder for Reva, and we have been pioneering battery swapping, probably one of the earliest companies driving an adoption of battery swapping infrastructure for a while. So it'll be good to kind of get the policy regime to start to become aligned to this, because this is an area where I think India as a country is innovating a lot faster than anywhere else in the world. Now, I'm going to skip through the basics, as we've enough covered it with enough presentations, that how battery swapping addresses the high cost, range anxiety, refueling time, and how the business model itself makes it easy for customers to acquire batteries, the vehicles without batteries, and then quickly go to an EV refueling station, whether it's on a petrol pump or somewhere else, and swap that. So I will not spend time on that. The value piece as well has been covered, that there is a lower upfront cost. The OEMs obviously get higher volume, they save a little bit on the cost of the development itself. They do have to integrate with multiple providers, but overall, for the benefit of the nation, you have fewer batteries that are deployed in the world, right? Because of range anxiety, most people, especially in cars, tend to buy bigger and bigger batteries. Whereas with swapping, if you have a network that provides you charge batteries when you need it, overall the country is going to spend less money, less lithium, less imports from wherever batteries are being made. We'll defer the discussion on manufacturing for another day. Now, again, many companies are doing it today. I don't have to repeat it in India, but also, several companies in China and Taiwan have been driving battery swapping, NEO for cars, Photon State Grid for buses, and Gogoro, as we know, for two-wheelers. Sun Mobility's solution has two parts. One is for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, which will have smaller modular batteries that go across two-wheelers, e-rickshaws, auto rickshaws. We have fast, quick interchange station that we are deploying in multiple locations, particularly in partnership with Indian Oil, as well as docks that make the integration very easy with a variety of vehicles. And we have a software, IoT-based cloud smart network that connects all of these technologies together, enables users to pay for batteries. And again, rather than showing videos, I'll refer you to youtube.com/sunmobility, where you can go see any of these. Similarly, we have a solution for buses, where we have larger batteries that require, instead of a manual swap, a robotic swap. So we have an automated robot that gets mounted, and we can use that to swap these batteries in an automated fashion for multiple bus sizes. And this is where we have partnership with Ashok Leyland. We have first project deployed in Ahmedabad, and we're trying to drive adoption for battery swapping, not just for smaller vehicles, but also buses. Now, on the policy front, right, which is where we should spend some time, I think there are three major challenges. First of all, and we have discussed this, the FAME2 subsidies are not available to swap technology. Now, while there's nothing in the original notification that really prohibits this, as Ritesh was saying, DHI hasn't really issued guidelines that enable people to clearly access subsidies for battery swapping. Either on a, and that can be done in multiple manners, we'll speak to that in a minute. And OEMs themselves have faced some difficulty in getting the right ARI certification for swap-enabled vehicles. So I think that's something I'm working on and we'll speak to in a few minutes. Also on the charging infrastructure side, MOP has not issued any guidelines around how they are going to incentivize establishment of charging infrastructure or swapping infrastructure accordingly. The second big policy gap that we face is around GST. So even though electric vehicles are at 5%, but the GST for swapping services are at 18%, which higher costs essentially get passed on to the customer. And that makes it costlier. So at least for a short period of time, maybe for a few years, the government should incentivize and put these on a level playing field. The key thing, right, on item 1 and item 2 is, while there is well-established norms and incentives around fixed battery solutions, the government hasn't really released the equivalent level of norms and notifications around swap technology-based products. And that's sort of a big gap that we should collectively as an industry try to go address. And last but not least, a lot of local, state and city level support seems to be missing. I mean, Delhi is the most glaring example where electric auto rickshaws have not been given any permits, right? And that case is stuck in Supreme Court, where while the government of Delhi wants to support electric vehicles, they believe their hands are tied because they can't issue additional permits or even allow permit-free auto rickshaws, electric auto rickshaws, unless the Supreme Court allows them to. Similarly, in many other states and cities, the registration benefits, while the central government has said you don't need to pay for registration cost, that really hasn't trickled down to the actual registration, the RTO office, and they're following those norms. Concessional EV, I know we talked about renewable energy, but then many states have also notified or at least announced lower cost concessional EV charging tariffs. But the process to actually get a connection with that tariff is often not very clear. So in each city or state that you go to, you have to go and figure out the process collaboratively with the government rather than having this predefined. So that's sort of the big picture, three major blockers, right, that we see on the policy side, and we should discuss that. I think on the FAME incentives, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, again, the best way that we have been proposing to the government has been that just like an OEM has to be registered with DHI and approved for availing subsidy, and an energy operator or a swap system operator should also be registered with DHI and equally qualified to provide to get the subsidies, right? And just like a registered OEM manufactures and sells certified vehicles, similarly a registered and energy operator can also manufacture or purchase these type approved swappable batteries and deploy them in the field and get equivalent subsidies or incentives that they pass along to the customer. Similar logic would apply to the charging infrastructure as well, where the government has announced a certain amount of demand incentive to deploy swap charging infrastructure, and a similar amount should then be applied for swapping infrastructure as well, which I think there's some discussion about, but nothing specific has been announced yet. The range criteria seems to be another pain point here. So even though, as Ritesh was saying earlier, theoretically, there should not be any reason to deny subsidy to a vehicle with swappable batteries, but the minimum range criteria have been applied, which makes it harder for a vehicle with a swappable battery to qualify. Keep in mind that one of the core economic principles of a battery swapping system is that you're giving a user smaller battery that they can swap easily in the network, which should be accessible to them. So on the other hand, if you're making a larger battery size as a minimum criteria for getting subsidy, that defeats the whole purpose. So that is one glaring sort of roadblock that we look forward to DHI and then ARAI to help address. Again, there has been some concerns and questions raised about potential for illegitimate usage and theft, and I think all the energy operators have today become sophisticated enough that they can provide data to DHI and provide certification that their batteries are actually being used for automotive use and not being used for something else. So given all of, for example, our batteries are connected through the cloud, we can provide usage information literally on a daily basis, obviously anonymized, which says that how much these batteries are going to be used. So that the government can be confident that the batteries that have been provided with an incentive are not being abused in any manner. On the bus side, again, the policy was already drafted again in a very significant technology agnostic manner. In fact, the Niti Aayog's model concession agreement as well allows these contracts to be bankable. Again, here the devil is in the detail, and the implementation has not been as clear and level playing field as it should be. Right, so while there is a clear methodology where they don't look at actually the size of the battery installed in the bus, but they look at the range that it covers and then figures out the incentive. However, that incentive, which theoretically should be available to both a fixed battery bus and swappable battery bus, is not being made available to a swappable bus because of minimum range requirements, which again defeats the purpose of swapping with a solar battery. So again, yet another area where there is a roadblock, and the intent of the government and the letter of the law is very, very different. And I think I already covered this point in terms of charging infrastructure. That's continues to be the same issue for buses as well. So that's sort of a very quick view of where some of the policy roadblocks are that we should think about and debate how we can jointly as an industry go and work with DHI, with Ministry of Power, with the right policymakers, including Niti Aayog, to start coming to the forefront and see how they can be addressed for this technology to really become mainstream. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajay. Yeah, I think it was, you used the time very well and made very sharp and relevant points, Ajay. Thank you. With that, we will go to our last speaker, Mr. Anand Deshpande, Senior Director, Deputy Director, ARAI. Anand, there were one or two points raised around difficulties and type approvals around swap battery systems. Maybe somewhere in your discussion, if you can also address that. Over to you, Anand.
Yes, thank you, Rahul. So I have been hearing all the views from the experts, from the OEMs, energy operator, fleet operator. So without wasting much time, because the previous speakers, they have already covered the topic comprehensively, I will touch upon the work which is happening at the government level, how we are supporting DHI. To give a background, as battery swapping is taking off or was taking off in the country, so DHI also thought that FAME 2 scheme was primarily developed considering fixed battery concept. So how it can be enabled for swappable battery business model. So DHI constituted an interministerial committee under the chairmanship of Director ARA. And the mandate given to this committee was to study the feasibility of swappable battery business model to promote electric mobility, which is the main objective of FAME scheme, to promote electric mobility in the country, and to examine coverage of swappable battery business model under FAME India scheme phase 2. So that is the mandate given to this committee. This committee did wide stakeholder consultation with vehicle manufacturers, battery manufacturers, fleet operators, various associations, R&D institutes, and it submitted its report to DHI. Subsequently, I will come to some of the contours of the report, which I can share, because at the moment the report is not formally adopted by DHI, so I will not be able to give all the contours of the report. But currently, we have been advised by DHI to do again stakeholder consultation for examining issue of interoperability or portability amongst swapping stations by way of standardization of battery form factor, connector, communication protocol. So we have been advised by DHI to again do the stakeholder consultation. Of course, in our report, this portion was covered, but it was almost 8 to 10 months old story. So again, freshly, we are doing a stakeholder consultation on this aspect. Probably most of the experts on this panel, also the participants in this webinar might have received our communication. We are seeking their views. So based on this stakeholder consultation, we'll compile it, we'll analyze it, and we'll give our, again, recommendations to DHI. Now coming, the earlier speakers have already covered what are the benefits of swappable battery. There is a reduced vehicle cost, efficient charging, no charging time waiting, and also range anxiety problem is overcome. So the committee has noticed and did the study of all the efforts which have taken place in the country, like Ola, Sun Mobility, then Kinetic. They have done various cities like Nagpur, Gurgaon, Bangalore. They have been running auto rickshaws, e-rickshaws using swappable battery. Then Ashok Leyland has launched along with Sun Mobility electric bus in Ahmedabad with swappable battery. Also, committee did the study of global experience of Gogoro running two-wheelers in Taiwan, and Honda is bringing two-wheeler swappable battery, and they are doing pilot study across Asian countries. Various IEC standards committees are also working on developing standards for swappable battery. So committee has done all this study. Now coming to the study as far as present regulatory framework is concerned. First is to become eligible, or I would say to bring any vehicle model into the market, CMVR type approval is required. And also for getting the FAME incentive, bare minimum requirement is that the vehicle model should be CMVR type approval. So we studied the CMVR requirements, various electric vehicle standards, and these standards are technology agnostic. So whether it is a fixed battery electric vehicle model or it is a swappable battery electric vehicle model, as long as the vehicle is meeting the electric vehicle standards requirement which are notified under CMVR, it can be type approved. So there is absolutely no change required in the various standards and CMVR rules as far as type approval certification of swappable battery electric vehicle model. So I can assure you, all the vehicle manufacturers or fleet operators or energy operators who have been having this kind of concern or doubt, that at ARA we have been extending entire support for the type approval and certification of swappable battery electric models. Already we have type approved number of three-wheeler models, also electric bus, the Ashok Leyland bus which is running in Ahmedabad also is type approved under CMVR. So there is no hesitation in type approving swappable battery electric vehicle model. There was one query about vehicle type approval with different battery models for the vehicle OEM. Now the type approval system always governs different makes and models of components which go into the vehicle. Now, if the battery, for the battery, the bare minimum requirement under CMVR type approval is battery safety, and there is a notified standard under that. AS48 is the currently notified standard. If the different battery models which the OEM is using, those are already tested and approved as per AS048, then that battery can be easily incorporated into any vehicle model, and the type approval extension can be given. So there is no concern as far as different batteries being used in the vehicle. Only difference could be if the battery capacity is different, battery chemistry is different, battery technology is different, and it might have effect on the performance of the vehicle in terms of change in range, change in energy consumption, or change in electrical safety on the vehicle, then it might cause certain tests or checks on the vehicle. Otherwise, it is a mere extension of type approval as far as electric vehicle model is concerned for different battery models. So same way type approval can be given to swappable battery electric models. Now, coming to the charging stations, there is a BIS committee which is working on developing the standards for charging stations, which are fixed battery models. But for swappable charging stations, there is they are having, this committee is having agenda point where subsequently they are going to discuss and define the Indian standards for battery bulk charging stations or swappable charging stations. In this context, IIT Madras, Dr. Prabhjot will be well aware because she has done very comprehensive work under IIT Madras, where they have developed specifications of bulk charging stations, and it was done along with various vehicle OEMs and battery manufacturers. So that work also could be taken further to develop the standards, Indian standards for battery swapping stations. Now, coming to the incentive under FAME scheme. There are three main points, which is product liability, because in fixed battery model, the vehicle OEM is the main anchor, and vehicle OEM takes the onus of the performance guarantee and warranty of the vehicle, including battery. So product liability is important. Performance of the vehicle. If you notice in FAME scheme, as compared to the phase 1 to the phase 2, much focus has been on the performance of the electric vehicle. That's how a lot of performance parameters have been notified under phase 2, so that only good quality, good performance electric vehicles would get government incentive. So these are the some of the provisions under FAME 2, and currently the committee has done a lot of work in the interministerial group, and they have done a study which is going to be the feasible business model in our country, and committee found that electric three-wheelers are the very low-hanging fruits where swappable battery model could be very successfully it is successfully feasible. It could be it is a low-hanging fruit because if you see the design is quite simple. Then the business model of the auto rickshaw driver, he is having long duty hours, and also he cannot afford a higher cost, and leasing, battery leasing on swappable business model would be very good for him from the operating cost point of view, and also his ROI also would be better. So the committee has in the report recommended to start with enabling FAME 2 phase 2 scheme for electric three-wheelers with swappable battery. And the other categories of vehicles, maybe two-wheelers, four-wheelers, buses, could be considered separately depending upon the field experience, how we get the experience in the field, how it is feasible for the three-wheelers. So that can be separately considered in due course of time. That is the consensus amongst the committee members. Now, to further the recommendations and our ARS point of view and also the committee members' point of view has been, as you know, the FAME 2 scheme is basically kept in mind about fixed battery vehicle models. So the incentive disbursement to the consumer is passed on through vehicle manufacturer. Now, in case of battery, swappable battery, the consumer is not buying the battery. He's not paying the cost. Instead, the energy operator is investing into the battery. So the incentive could be given to vehicle manufacturer again, but it could be passed on to the energy operator based on the commercial tie-up between vehicle manufacturer and energy operator. So probably Ola Electric also was echoing the same sentiment, and committee also is thinking on the similar line. For the technical parameters, the committees of the members of the opinion that the performance parameters should be same, including range, for even for swappable battery electric models. And we are observing that some of the three-wheeler models, they are able to meet the performance parameters. We have already done FAME evaluation of electric three-wheelers with swappable battery, and they are able to meet the performance parameters. And also the incentive formula would be same. It will be rupees 10,000 per kilowatt hour of the energy content of the battery, and it could be given to the vehicle manufacturer, and it could be further passed on to the energy operator. Localization requirements also will be same as that of the FAME scheme. So the battery swappable electric model also will have to meet the localization requirement. Now here the point up to this the consensus has been reached and the report is submitted. Now DHI is advising that from the consumer point of view, we should have interoperability or standardization of batteries, because suppose the consumer had purchased a swappable battery electric vehicle, and there is a energy provider who is supplying the swappable battery. For any somehow reasons, as because some of the speaker was also saying, if the energy operator has wound his business and there is no swapping station available, what the consumer will do? Or the consumer is not happy with the service provided by the energy operator, whether he has got the choice to change the service provider. So from that point of view, interoperability or portability would be of importance from the consumer point of view. So from that point of view, DHI has advised us to again do a stakeholder consultation, wherein some degree of standardization of we can discuss and debate whether battery size, dimensions, connector, communication protocol will be required, so that the consumer will have the choice to change the service provider or to avail the service from a different swapping station. So while doing so, we have to also keep in mind the business interest of energy operator, because energy operator has invested into purchasing the batteries and establishing the swapping station. So here there are two kinds of examples. Dr. Prabjot was mentioning about gas cylinder model, where we are having Bharat Petroleum or Hindustan Petroleum or a private gas cylinder as our household cylinder. But we can get our cylinder refilled only from our gas company. We cannot go to a different gas company to exchange our gas cylinder. So this is the kind where the consumer has to go to the same energy operator for swapping the battery. But if you consider mobile service, in mobile service we only purchase the handset and we have got the SIM from the mobile service provider company. So there is a standardization of the SIM and also the SIM slot communication between SIM and handset, and also the SIM and the tower infrastructure. In particular area, if we are not getting the mobile coverage, there is a tie-up amongst the mobile service companies. Our call gets connected through different service provider, and their rates, calling rates, get automatically adjusted for their revenue. Similarly, if the particular consumer is not happy about one service provider, one has the choice to discontinue one service provider and to buy or get SIM from another service provider and use the same handset. So these are already successful business models we are experiencing. Those are very mature business models. So this kind of sort of business model could be a mature business model in swappable battery business also. But I also personally agree swappable battery business model is in very nascent stage. It is still evolving. A lot of innovations are happening. It has not reached to a scale or volume where we can have this kind of matured technologies and technologies or standardization requirement. But down the line, our roadmap should be we should provide this kind of freedom and technological solution to the consumer, so that the consumer interests are also safeguarded. This is the intention from the government. From that point of view, we have been again asked to do a stakeholder consultation. We are in the midst of that consultation. Based on the views which we received, we will analyze it, and again we will provide our recommendations to DHI so that appropriate decision could be taken. We are also quite optimistic that as early as possible. We will make our efforts so that decision is made and FAME to incentive is extended to swappable battery electric vehicle model. As far as from area, I can assure you all the panel speakers and all the participants who are working in this area that we will extend all the technical support wherever and all the administrative and certification support wherever regulations are permitting. We will not keep any stone unturned to provide or extend our support. That is the assurance from our ARS side. About buses also, one of the speakers was mentioning, the committee also noticed that in India, the buses, electric buses are tendered on the OPEX model. So the business model of running the electric buses is technology agnostic. It is on operational cost. So whether the bus is with fixed battery or whether it is swappable battery, it is a running cost of the bus, and the bus manufacturer and the bus operator who is operating the buses in the cities under GCC contract, they are free to use the appropriate business model. I don't think the technology is restricting that, and same incentive it could be also extended to electric buses. So this was in short. I wanted to talk about the brief overview, what the work is happening at DHI and also the CMVR requirements and what thought process is going on. So we'll be happy to answer any questions if any are there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anand. I think this is great. It's just that we have overrun of time. I request the audience, like, if we can stay around for some more time, and we can actually do a very quick, I would say, like rapid fire round between all the panelists who have really brought very good points. And we just, I think, like, if we can really try to conclude some of the points, that would be great. So I think what I found very consistently across all the panelists, including agreed by ARI and Anand, that definitely the subsidy should be extended to battery swapping. And more or less, I think what I heard from Nitesh, supported by Ajay and Anand as well, that the subsidy mechanism of extending it through the vehicle OEM is something easy, possibly can happen in the existing mechanism, easy for DHI also to monitor. So this is a question to maybe Ritesh and others. Like, do we agree that this mechanism is really going to be good, and then supported by area recommendations, we can quickly kind of give this consensus and get going with FAME 2 subsidy applied to battery swapping via the vehicle OEM? So maybe if Ritesh, you can take a first view on it.
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. So yes, we feel that this mechanism is already proven, and today we are able to pass on the subsidy because the customer is coming to our dealerships to buy the vehicle, and that's where the buy happens. That process starts. So for him to get the benefit of lower EMIs, lower cost of acquisition, lower cost of buy, it is this system seems to be much better than any other system, and it is proven. I mean, since last 2 years, FAME 1, FAME 2, this demand incentive is being distributed, through the vehicle OEMs. So we feel that yes, this would be rational to even incentivize the battery swapping subsidy through the vehicle OEMs.
Okay. Is there any other thing? Because I think all of you said that the mechanism of share between OEM and energy operator can be left to them. Do you see that going forward, this would become a point of contention, and does this require clarity, or you think the industry can really make this agree?
So I have a slightly different point of view on that. See, our approach is, customer centric, and we feel that the entire subsidy should be passed on to the consumer rather than it being shared between the vehicle OEM and the energy operator. I feel that the more the affordable the vehicle is, the more compelling the proposition is. There will be more spread of electric vehicles, and ultimately that is going to be a good business case for the OEMs also and for the energy operators also. So as an OEM, our view is that we have invested into the vehicle, into our plants, into our assembly lines, our welding lines, and in our R&D. But we pass on the entire subsidy to our customer, to make it a very compelling proposition. Same should happen, in case of the subsidy on swappable batteries.
Ajay, your
Rahul,
viewpoint?
continuing.
Yeah, please, Prabjot.
Yeah, continuing on the same, I thought would be good to understand maybe if Dr. Deshpande can tell, since it is for the swapping application, so for the same vehicle, is there a limitation on the numbers that is prescribed on the vehicles? Ratio between vehicles and swappable batteries, because batteries would go off very quickly. So the vehicle is going to last, and you need to pump in more and more batteries into the system. So how many numbers would the numbers of batteries would be subsidized?
Yeah, presently the FAME scheme specifies that when the vehicle comes with, even if it is swappable battery, the vehicle will come with some batteries installed into the vehicle for the FAME testing. So depending upon 1, 2 or 3, whatever batteries are fitted into the vehicle and what is the total capacity, energy content of the battery. So depending upon rupees 10,000 per kilowatt hour of the battery, whatever incentive amount comes, that will be approved by DHI as an incentive. But there have been representations that the energy operator is required to have additional sets of batteries, maybe 1.5, 1.4. So different ratios are there. But it was discussed in the committee, but the committee is not able to take decision on that front. Plainly, the normal incentive means, I can say one factor of one is being considered. Whatever batteries are fitted into the vehicle as a normal vehicle, that much incentive could be approved by DHI. That is the committee recommendation. Of course, finally the decision will be by the government.
Yeah, but Mr. Ajay and maybe Mr. Nitish, if you can add that, do you see that those many number of batteries would be sufficient as an operator? Because if these are used in routine and you are doing 2 or 3 times swaps a day, you would probably want to pump in same number of batteries again in about 6 months' time.
No, not just that, Dr. Prabjot. For every battery that the customer gets in a vehicle, we have to keep at least 50 to 70% extra, so that when the customer comes for swapping into the station, there is a battery available. So by taking the approach that Mr. Anand is describing, I think you are underserving the market, right? It's again goes back to my fundamental principle. It's not a level playing field. So you're essentially setting up an incentive for fixed batteries by saying bigger the battery, more the incentive. But if a swappable battery guy is putting smaller batteries and making equivalent number of batteries available outside the vehicle in a system in their swapping station, then you're not incentivizing those. So maybe something missing there.
Yeah, I would like to highlight. Yeah, these points were discussed in detail in the committee. My suggestion would be, let us start somewhere. Otherwise, if we debate on this, then nothing will move. So my suggestion, humble suggestion would be, we'll start somewhere. If I personally think that it will be a very successful business model in certain categories. If we can show the results on the ground, the government will be quite keen, because government's intention is promotion of electric mobility, and if that purpose is being served and that is observed, then subsequently we can again do policy interventions, and we can push for additional demand. But if at the start we start with all the demands, then I think there it could be a non-starter.
I think I kind of support Anand's viewpoint that we need to get a start. But at the same point, Anand, like while the DHI has asked for this fresh set of recommendations, I think if some of these points can be looked into from little end to end, how it will work. Maybe in the similar scenario, something better could fit in for a better consensus. Nitish, you have something to add?
Yeah, Rahul, a couple of points. I think I would agree again with Anand sir that we could start with a ratio of 1, because that has what we have been experiencing, that swapping requires 30 to 40% more batteries on the operational standpoint. But I think that has been the debate which has been keeping pushing this policy unlock for quite a long time. So even if the extra batteries does not attract any subsidy, the BSOs has the opportunity to spread that cost over the lifetime, and that could reflect into the subscription fee for the end consumer. But we at least we have something to start with, and we have a model that we could prove on ground on a larger scale. Last point on the Ritesh's comment was that what we are saying that subsidy on a swappable model, the economic arrangement needs to be made between a vehicle OEM and a battery OEM. Given that in a swapping model, the end user does not purchases the battery, I cannot pass the subsidy to the end user for purchasing an asset which he hasn't done. So ultimately, the subsidy needs to go to the battery OEM, because you are linking it to the battery capacity as well. So I think the economic arrangement would needs to be made between a battery OEM and a vehicle OEM, so that the subsidy gets reflected there, because battery would be on the BSO's books.
I think you made a good point. Maybe what Ritesh mean would be like through the swapping charges that will go to the end consumer, that should in some way reflect the subsidy that is used by the energy operator. In that way, that will flow. But how do we monitor? Because I think Anand made one suggestion. There was some written on his slide about the need for regulating the swapping charge. And I think like as an industry advocator, I would strongly kind of disagree with that view to kind of put any kind of limitations or regulations on swap battery charges set by the system. So maybe Ajay, what would be your viewpoint on that point?
And I would agree with that, Rahul, that at least I don't see any commercial product, leaving aside a few things like petrol, diesel, which are price is being managed by the government. So I am not sure I understand the logic of that. Because by regulating the price, you're again telling the consumer, it's like saying, I want to regulate the price of all mobile phones. So if a mobile phone has 6-inch screen, it is this price. If it has 7-inch screen, this price, 4-inch screen, that price. So that logic somehow escapes me as to why that is being proposed.
Sure.
Presently regulating the swapping fee is not the recommendation or the content. So I want to, but these were some of the points which were discussed in the committee. But presently it is not on the radar. I want to clarify.
I think that is very good, Anand. And another point, Anand, like in your recommendations, you have suggested FAME to subsidy extension for three-wheelers and buses. Is there any specific reason that it should not be done for any vehicle segments, especially two-wheelers? And I think four-wheelers, yes, possibly currently not many people are working in that space. But shouldn't that be left open across the vehicle segments which are appropriately type-proof and able to establish their operation and business model?
In two-wheelers, there are two-wheelers. There are two categories actually. One is personal two-wheelers, and then there are delivery two-wheelers, means commercial applications.
Right.
In individual or personal two-wheeler segment, the consumers already the two-wheeler batteries are removable. Those are portable. Everybody, suppose I am staying on the 4th floor, I am carrying my battery, removing from the vehicle, taking to my home and charging it. So as it is removable from the vehicle. And also most of the individual users, they prefer home charging. They want, even though suppose they use a swappable battery, they want the option of charging at home because that is their comfort level. I agree, for the second category where it is the delivery kind of vehicles, like those are like fleet operators. So there the fleet operator can have swappable battery business model. But the committee took the cognizance of all these operations, and committee thought that let us see the performance of three-wheelers, and the next candidate is going to be two-wheelers. So depending upon the success of three-wheelers, two-wheelers also could be covered under this swappable battery under FAME scheme. But again, to start with three-wheelers.
Okay. Prabjot,
Nitish, you want to say something?
Yeah, sir, I agree with your point that personal use case two-wheelers would also want an option of a portable charging at their home. I think there are many surveys done that home charging is preferred and what, but on the operational standpoint, what we see on ground in Delhi, even if I prefer home charging, ultimately I'm not able to avail a separate EV charging tariff if I charge my battery at home. And what it does, it pushes me to a higher consumer slab of electricity, even my residential electricity consumption, implying that I end up paying more for both my EV as well as my residential consumption. So that has been a deterrent even for home charging. So I think what we believe that yes, option needs to be provided for personal vehicles, for portable vehicles, but subsidy should go for two-wheelers as well.
So I think I will augment Nitish's view. We conducted some 700 customer survey in city of Pune, and we brought about this case point of their preference of charging. Yes, home charging was preferred, but battery swapping with the proposition of battery swapping, it was really liked and preferred by many people. So I think from the policy standpoint of view, possibly we should avoid kind of once it is proven and there are business cases. I think any avoidance of any one segment over other, I think that possibly should be looked into. So that I think will be our recommendation. And especially for India, when we are talking of 80%, 75 to 80% two-wheeler case, I think that segment should not be overlooked. So that is around the vehicle segment. I think the other points related to EV electricity tariff and GST reductions, I think it will happen uh, uh, around the battery swapping station. I think there are still some confusions around the definition around public charging station, like can we call all kind of battery charging station as public charging station, or again there will be some different definitions there. Nitish and Ajay, do you think these points are clear or it needs some explicit statement either by DHI or Ministry of Power?
I think we need a lot of clarity from both DHI and Ministry from Power, right? So right now, I think the policy side is still very raw, and it needs to be clearer in many dimensions, not just these ones. I don't know, Nitesh, what you...
So some of the points, Ajay, you already mentioned in terms of the range definition and those points. I was specifically asking for the public charging station definition. So a swap charging station in either format, either a swap plus charging combined in a way that currently Sun Mobility is offering, or a distributed system where there are swapping outlets and a centralized bulk charging. In both these modes, can we call them as a public charging station and avail subsidy for them, or those are also the gray area which really needs to be clarified?
It seems to me still in a gray area, right? Than what we are saying. So typically a swapping station will do charging as well. But again, my fear is what is the decision we are trying to make? Because it seems like we are heading towards the path of heavy regulation on a very nascent industry, where there is a lot of innovation yet to come. Whereas the government seems to be wanting to regulate it as if this is, the telecom industry 3.0, where all the rules, playing fields have to be decided in advance. People have to stay in their sandbox, just do exactly this and not that. And that's sort of the kind of message I seem to be getting, which is very confusing. Why do we have to solve everything in advance and prevent the industry from innovating by sitting in essentially rooms and conference rooms and committees and deciding, and prevent innovation that can actually happen in the market rather than in the conference rooms?
So I kind of support that view, Ajay, and I think that's why, and I heard the same resonating from other panelists, that standardization should be a separate discussion which the industry with consensus is pursuing and developing. But that should not delay the fiscal incentives that should go to battery swapping systems fairly immediately, not really delay. So I think that should come and happen immediately.
Yeah, I think, Rahul, what we have to take a stand and as a recommendation or a summary that comes out of this panel is that subsidy or FAME part of an annual should be treated very, very differently as compared to what we treat the standardization. And we need not wait for the standardization to come or say that standardization is compulsory to get into the FAME subsidy, because the kind of the necessity that we are in from swapping point of view, I think only thing we need to get into for even the charging point of view is that not only the public chargers, but chargers that are swapping stations are also included in that. Now, further, we need not lay down the norms and the standard procedures, specifications, that this is the kind of the swap station which would be subsidized. Maybe that some limitations or with some configurations on the safety side of it, that those should be met, and the rest should be, I mean, the configuration, amount of number of swap stations that would be there, or to that matter, the what kind of display should be there, etc., etc. So all those innovations and business features should be left open, but we should not wait for the standardization on the swap stations or standardization of the battery or the vehicle to happen to say that FAME subsidy would apply on that. So I think the two have to be treated very, very differently. To that matter, even when we talk about the public chargers, we don't have standardization as far as BIS is concerned in place, but we are open for the subsidy. So the subsidy is happening for the public charges also, and it needs to happen on the swapping charges also in a similar manner, while the standardization can happen in parallel.
I vote for you, Prabjot. That's a very good summary. At least, what about else, Nitish, Ritesh? Like, do you think at least on this point we all are agreeing together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a OEM also, we support this view because, a lot, I mean, we are talking, since a long time. We can get started, and as the system gets mature, we can come up with rules and regulations. Everything, need not be 100% perfect, when we start the journey. I mean, we can at least, get going. Probably we will have many interesting facts, as we go along. And then we can introduce standards and regulations, but we should start immediately. I do not see why there is so much debate, because I mean, swapping is just decoupling the battery. I mean, there is ultimately a battery in the vehicle, right? So we can start with the fixed battery standards, as correctly pointed out by Nitish, and to some extent even Ajay is I think that he is on the board, that okay, let us start with whatever system of incentives we have, and let us see how it progresses. The only small point I have to make here is that we must ensure while I have full confidence on the credibility of Ola Electric and Sun Mobility. We are partnering with all of them, but still I mean, just for the convenience of the buyer or to maintain a continuity, there has to be something, I mean, again, this is not preventing, for starting the subsidy regime, but government should think about this, that, some should not happen that, somebody just opens the shop and then runs away, after running it for 6 months. That will dent the credibility of the entire industry. That will dent the credibility of the kind of systems, Ajay and Nitish are trying to build in the country. So that is something, which we think that, should be dealt with seriously. Government should give it a thought. Otherwise, I think that we can get started very quickly, and it's only going to do, good to the entire EV ecosystem.
I think that is a very good summary and concluding note for this webinar. Anand, I am sure like all the other panelists will agree that we are at your disposal if there is anything that we can help compile from this discussion or otherwise to support ARAIs taking a quick stand and facilitating government and helping this subsegment battery swapping to really evolve faster. So I thank you to all the participants and all my dear friends, colleagues, and panelists who has been so patient with this time extension and added their very valuable insights. I do hope that we all take this responsibility as well to really take this thing forward to the right line ministry and really help right decisions while all industry private players and PSUs are already on ground acting upon it. So again, thank you everyone. Thanks a lot. Have a good day, good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you. I think Rahul, there were questions. Maybe we can post to the participants later on.
Yeah. So like to all the participants, we will answer all these questions and share with you
Yeah.
just for missing upon this opportunity to handle here. Thank you for that kind reminder and thanks for great moderation and help, Prabjot.
Thanks, Rahul. Thanks to all the panelists. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Rahul.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.